I'm Mike Uyak. I love to try new things, and I've had culinary adventures all around the world, as well as right at home. I've had really wonderful food, as well as some really horrible food. I'd like to share some of my adventures with you, and we'll see if I have what it takes to fix whatever goes wrong. This is Recipe Redemption. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Recipe Redemption. Today I'm feeling rather awful. Actually, I feel fine, but I'm playing with offal, the parts of the animal that many of us have never eaten, perhaps never even thought of eating, maybe never knew were edible to begin with. On this channel I've already played around with cooking blood on several occasions, and I'm looking forward to working my way outward, I guess, until we've explored all the tasty parts of every animal we can get our hands on, because meat. So today I have one such party part we should all be able to wrap our heads around. Brains. There was once a time when eating brains was not only considered perfectly normal, but because you only get one per animal, and they tend to be fairly small compared to the rest of the animal, depends on the animal, pretty small, they were actually considered special, fancy eating. A brain's texture is very, I probably shouldn't shake this quite so much. A brain's texture is very soft, regardless of the method of cooking. And the flavor is very, very mild. One might even say delicate. So it lends itself to really subtle dishes. But in modern times, brains have fallen in culinary stature somewhat, and is only really consumed in certain areas of the U.S. as a part of regional culture. In the South, scrambled eggs and brains are still something of a cultural staple, and in the Northeast, you can find places where fried brain sandwiches are popular. Outside the U.S., there are also certain still cuisines that feature brains. The French, of course. Cubans do a sort of a brain fritter. The Chinese eat frickin' everything anyway, so of course they have multiple preparations for brains. It's a little difficult to get a hold of brains because of this drop in popularity. You probably aren't going to find it in your local Mega Mart. Unless you're in the South, it's possible that you'll find at least the canned stuff on the shelf in the South because of the aforementioned scrambled eggs and brains. But fresh brains, a little harder to get a hold of. Your best bet, if you want them fresh, is to find yourself a local butcher shop that specializes in whole animal butchery. They actually buy a whole animal, slaughter it, cut it into primals and subprimals, and sell them off in their shop. You're more likely to actually get some of the less common cuts, because they paid for the whole animal, and by God, they're going to sell the whole animal. So if there is a market for brains or pig's trotters or pig's ears or a whole pig head, for instance, or tripe or something like that, you're more likely going to get it from a purveyor like that, particularly if you ask for it ahead of time. If they don't normally sell it because it's just not a real popular seller, but you tell them ahead of time, hey, the next time you butcher a pig or a cow or whatever, I'm looking for X, Y, and Z. They'll be more than happy to set that aside for you and let you know when they have it. Now, brains like this is pork brains in milk gravy, and the gravy is gravy. It is just barely what you would call a gravy, because it's got the milk, but it's just thickened with cornstarch. So it's really not gravy. It's not cooked. It's not really thickened much. And it doesn't have a whole lot of other flavors in it. Especially, like I said, the brains, not a whole lot of flavor to them. So the gravy doesn't really taste like anything. Really, the milk is there, to my mind anyway, to kind of help leach out some of the more organy flavors of the brains. If you actually get fresh brains, they tend to have a little bit more of a, not really metallic, but just sort of a generally organy flavor. There's sort of a minerality to it that some people find a little off-putting. The milk really helps to kind of draw some of that out. Pork brains are what we're doing today. There are others. Lamb brains are also somewhat popular in the brain eating crowd, I guess, if there is such a community. Beef brains, a little harder even still to find. You can, but they're generally calves brains. I believe the rule now is you can't sell any brains from a cow older than, I think, 30 weeks, I think is the rule. Don't quote me on that, I'm not sure. Whole reason is mad cow disease. Bovine spongiform encephalopathy. It's a disease that they believe, they're not 100% sure, which is why they're taking so many precautions, are passed on through prions, which are little bits of really genetic material that just float around, and if they're taken up by a cell, that cell starts making whatever protein that little strand of DNA codes for. And a lot of times it's just garbage, but what ends up happening is it actually affects the nervous system. So the cow starts to get tremors, difficulty coordinating its muscle movements, and eventually what can happen is the cow stops breathing and dies in a quivering mass. It's really unpleasant, and there's the possibility that it can actually affect humans if you consume it, particularly nervous tissue. So you could have a cow that might have bovine spongiform encephalopathy, not showing symptoms yet. You can slaughter that cow, eat it, you'll be perfectly fine as long as you don't eat the nervous tissue. You don't eat the brain or the brain stem. So for that reason, and because it develops over time, and it's caused by exposure. Usually, what they did was they took the bones from previously slaughtered cows, ground them up into a bone meal, and fed them to the next generation of cows. And because the bones also have the spinal cord, there's some nervous tissue in there, could get into that bone meal, which could get into the next generation of cows and infect them. So because that's something that typically affects cows as they get older, younger cows, their brains are probably safe. So if you can find cows' brains for human consumption, they're going to be on the younger side. But we're not going to play with that today. We're doing pig brains today. Good. I'm just going to play around and see what we can actually do with these today. Now these are really small cans. They're 5-ounce cans, and there's a lot of milk in there, so there's probably not 5 ounces of actual pork brains in here, because I'm pretty sure it's actually a lot of that is milk. So I'm not going to get a whole lot out of these cans. I've got 2 cans of these. Let's see what we can make with them. Let's go.
Okay, scrambled eggs and brains. It doesn't really get much simpler than this. This is my 8-inch non-stick frying pan that I use primarily for egg dishes. I just add a little olive oil onto the bottom and then toss in my pork brains. I've drained most of that milk gravy off and actually gave this a little bit of a rinse under some cold water, but there's still a little bit of residual in there. That's okay. So I've just got this over sort of medium-high heat, and I'm going to toss them around just to kind of dry them out a little bit and make sure that they're heated through. These brains actually they're basically ready to heat and eat. They're already cooked. After about 1.5 minutes, my pork brains are sizzling away. I'm going to add some egg, probably a couple eggs worth. And just like any scrambled eggs or an omelet, stir the middle. See that curds are starting to form. Then add a little bit of kosher salt and a couple twists of fresh ground black pepper. And then vainly consider the possibility of actually turning this into an omelet, but then realizing that it's a little too delicate at this point, and I'm tearing it. I should probably just go back to making scrambled eggs like I had originally planned.
So here we are with our brains and scrambled eggs. There's definitely a a meatier aroma to the air than you would normally get with just a regular batch of scrambled eggs. So once again, the proof of the pudding, so to speak, is how it tastes. Let's get a little bit of egg here, and a big ol', I'll try to get some egg here, and a big old hunk of brain. Bon appetit. It's not offensive. It's definitely different. The chunks of brain have a very different texture. It's almost I mean, it has a sort of a creaminess to it. It's in texture-wise, it's somewhere between pate and tuna fish, if you can imagine. Flavor-wise, there's actually more flavor than I remember. It's been a long time since I've actually had any brain. Insert joke here, but I don't remember there being as much flavor as I'm actually getting here. Certainly the salt and pepper help, but it's not really porky, but it just generally meatier. It's kind of, there's an umami-ness to it that does distinguish it from the scrambled eggs. A lot of people say that because they're so similar in texture, they kind of go together, and you almost lose the brains in the scrambled eggs. But I don't see that. It's very definitely there, but it's not bad. I'm sure I didn't see any in my research, but I'm sure in the South they probably drown this in some sort of gravy too, which I'm all for. But overall, not bad. Now, it does make me think, though, there might be other things that we can do with this. So a zero recipe. I took the other can of pork brains and milk gravy and made myself a brain fritter. Basically, some brains and some of the liquid that was canned in, the gravy, and made up a sort of fritter batter and fried them up. Batter was a little loose, so the fritter's a little funky looking, but let's see what it tastes like. Not bad. Again, the brains have a very, very, very delicate flavor, so mostly what I'm getting is the spice mixture that I use to season the batter. And a very, very, very subtle hint of porkiness to it, but these aren't bad. I don't think anyone would notice if you served them this and didn't tell them that there were brains in them. But there's one more thing that I want to try. Saw this recently on an episode of iZombie. Pork shumai with brains. Not bad. Obviously, the flavoring of the shumai really overpowers the brains in themselves. Don't even really notice it's there. But it's definitely a nice little addition to pretty much anything, since it's so subtle. You could slip these into anything and no one would even know. And unlike on the series iZombie, this doesn't really have any effect. That was weird. So I'd like to encourage you to try some awful things. Look up some recipes and pick up some of those less loved parts of the animal and try them out for yourself. You might find that you like them. Until next time, I'd like to thank you for watching. I'm Mike Uyak, and this is Recipe Redemption. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and please post below any ideas or comments that you might have. I'm open to anything, obviously. So, till next time, thanks for watching.